Hello, Rune Weavers, and welcome back to Rune Weaving with Birch. We are going to be continuing our walk through the second Aett of the Elder Futhark today with the rune Nauthiz, a rune of need, of inner workings, outer workings, and making things happen. And speaking of making things happen, this is the hobby horse you all saw me working on my last video. She has chosen to go by the name Mystique, and she is a what you might call one of the watchers of my birch loft here. And so she lives near one of my goddess poles and helps keep an eye on things in this house. She's also a very good horsey. So I thought you all ought to have the opportunity to meet her formally now that she's all made and finished up. So that's Mystique, the hobby horse. The time around the Celtic festival of Beltane is a very important time for hobby horses and the magic of bringing in the spring and creating that change between that which was and that which what will be, and very much a time like of what is becoming. Yes, that looks right. I always forget that I need to draw them backwards to make the runes appear correctly on camera. It's that mirror image camera thing. I'm not a professional videographer. I do my best, but I am not going to pretend I am some kind of mastery of videography. I feel that humans claiming mastery over things is pure arrogance. And one thing working with runes and magic will often teach you is mastery is hubris in action. This is also why I call myself a rune weaver, and you will never hear me call myself a rune master, because I believe that to claim mastery over the runes in the form of a regular human, one human lifetime, is a level of hubris as to be completely laughable. I am, however, perfectly capable of using them in the manner that I think things need to be used, when and where. So I know I often start us off with a verse from the Havamal, but instead of a verse from the Havamal today, I'm going to read to you the section of the Anglo-Saxon rune poem which talks about Nauthiz. Need constricts the heart, but it often serves as a help and salvation to the sons of man if they attend to it in time. Translation by R.I. Page. I think that verse really speaks to the heart of what Nauthiz is, magically speaking. Like a lot of runes, its shape goes back into its power. So you have the first line here representing the stick. You have then the second line representing the smaller stick. And what do you get if you rub two sticks together? Fire. Which is why Nauthiz is, of course, a fire rune. But it's not fire. If you remember when we talked about Kenaz, I talked about fire being harnessed, fire being used for human purposes. This is the fire as it was seen by people who lived in a climate, very much as I do now, where much of the year it is cold, very, very cold. A climate where you do not have the ability to hit a switch and central heat just comes on. A climate where your use of fire, a fire in the hearth, I think Nauthiz very much is a hearth fire rune. Fire outside in your campsite. Maybe you're out hunting. Maybe you're just out, on your property. Maybe you're watching your flocks or your herds and you're far from home. So you light a fire on your campsite or in your little shelter to keep you warm. This is the fire that stands between you and freezing to death. And that's why when we talk about it as a need fire, that's sort of the origin of that concept. It then, of course, developed and grew from that, where we then talk about, the need fires of the changing seasons, the fires of Beltane in the Celtic tradition, which bring about the change from the cold of winter to spring, the fire that blesses the cattle with fertility. So you definitely have that sense and that connection with the fire change driven by need. And when you consider a lot of what human ingenuity comes from, it usually springs from one of two things. Either we were bored or we were desperate. If you think about it that way, how much of what humans have accomplished, from computers to agriculture to fire, how many of those inventions and how many of those concepts came about either because we were bored and we wanted something to do, or because we had a need and that was a way to fill it. And considering that, humans, the Homo genus human, use of fire probably goes back before Homo sapiens, it is, in a sense, what made Homo sapiens possible. The cooked meat changes the composition of the food, allows a better breakdown of calories, and that's what enabled us to have bigger and bigger brains. So, when you tap into the power of the rune Nauthiz, and you think about that act of rubbing two sticks together, you're tapping into a line of magic that may be you're talking into a line of magic that may be substantially older than anything else that you are going to be doing magically. Let's just put it that way. There's another kind of concept here. If you remember when we talked about Gabo, and I explained the importance of, the equal exchange, the balanced exchange. Take a look at these two runes next to each other, Gabo and Nauthiz. Do you see the similarities there? Except the difference is this is unequal. This is equal. Nauthiz is not an equal exchange the way that Gabo is, physically, within the runes. And I think there's a lot to unpack in that fact as well. I mean, with Nauthiz, what are you sacrificing? You're sacrificing a couple of sticks to build a fire. Weighed against your life. Weighed against whatever need, whatever desire that you have. It's not quite an even exchange, but it is, in a sense, a sacrifice. I do not burn birch wood in terms of a regular fire. Obviously, because of my name, there are certain things I do with birch trees, magically speaking, not other ways speaking. But, working with the bark, working with the wood, there's strict taboos and rules that I follow when I work with birch wood compared to any other form of wood. And one of them is I do not just take a birch log and throw it into a fire. I would have to be pretty much freezing to death, and that's the only wood left before I would do something like that. But again, that's where Nauthiz comes in. the only way that I burn birch wood is with 2 sticks shaped into Nauthiz to symbolize that need, that drive, because of my relationship with that tree and that goddess, but the goddess of the birch trees. So that's talking about Nauthiz in terms of the fire, in terms of creation of new ideas and new opportunities. Nauthiz as a rune of sacrifice and exchange. It's also a rune that's very closely tied to fate. When we talk about, the fates, and we go back to that concept, remember, of past, present, and future. The past is everything that has been woven. The present is the precise moment in which that weaving happens. And the future is everything that is yet unwoven. Nauthiz has influence over what is unwoven. It allows you to focus and direct your magical energies towards where you need them to go in terms of defying whatever. Say you feel really trapped into a certain situation. You feel like you don't have a way out of it and you want to break free. Okay? Nauthiz is a rune that you would then apply to this situation where you feel hemmed in by your fates and your desperation. Nauthiz is a rune that works best when there's an element of desperation behind it. Because again, we're not talking about good choices here. We're talking about a rune that really works best when your back is against the wall. So the desperation combined with Nauthiz magic can enable you. You may not be able to overwrite, the orlog underneath, but the weird that you are to some extent woven into, we have a certain small amount of control over, that part of it. Nauthiz can be used to redirect your weird in that sense. But again, it is a rune that you use not like, you can, but to get the best results with Nauthiz, you are probably going to have to really want or really need that rune to do something for you. And it's best to have that goal clearly in mind so it can work with you. But at the same time, I've also had good luck with it where maybe I don't know exactly what I want, but I know what I want to avoid. And I have a rough idea of the outcome that I do want. And so you can take Nauthiz and you can work with it. Again, what I would recommend is you take your stick, you can cross tie a smaller stick on top of it to create the rune. Then if you have a fire, you set that offering into the fire as you're doing the magical working. And as you do this, you call upon Nauthiz to help you redirect your weird towards what you are trying to achieve. And it will at least help redirect that magic, that energy, that focus from where things are going, maybe pushing it into a better direction. But yeah, definitely work Nauthiz with fire whenever possible. If fire isn't possible, maybe if you can't have like a whole fire, a candle could work. I could conceivably see burying it, using it like a seed, like, offering it to the earth, like, hey, mother, please, I really need this. Whatever I can do to make it happen, here you go. That could probably work as well. I haven't tried it with water. Giving it as an offering. If I did that, I would probably make it more as like an offering to whatever water spirit is local to me, offering as a gift. That might have better results, but I can't personally speak to trying that. If anyone has any input on that, I would certainly welcome it in the comments. What else can we say about Nauthiz? Because this is a fairly complicated rune. Yeah, so I think if anything, we're going to look and see those elements of it. And this, like I said at the beginning, this being spring, it is a time when that change, historically, need is a very, very strong feeling at this time of year. If you are a farming or herding society, the birth of the animals, the planting of the seeds, if anything goes wrong now and your corn isn't knee-high by the 4th of July, there'd be a good chance that you'd be going hungry next winter. And we obviously know a lot about how in those societies, famine was oftentimes just a knife edge away. So again, that's where the concept of need as a springtime, because again, remember, we're working to change our fates in a better direction, so it's not so good after the fact, but under the influence of Skald and the future, it has a little more wiggle room. This is the time when you're trying to affect your weird for next winter to see how well you're going to eat and how well you and your family are going to survive. So, Rune Weavers, blessed be. Thank you for joining me on this video. I'm going to do my best to keep up on them. It's spring. A lot of things are happening, front end, back end. So it's not always easy for me to make the videos as frequently as I do, but I am doing my best. Blessed be, Rune Weavers.